This video is going to go over how you can solve problems for the No Calculator section of SAT Practice Test 1. In the description, I'll have a link for this PDF, as well as for SAT math notes and for useful SAT math formulas that won't appear in the reference section of the test. So let's get on to the first problem. Let's see, number 1. If x minus 1 over 3 equals k, and k equals 3, what's the value of x? So we need to solve for x, and I'm going to plug in 3 for k here. So we've got x minus 1 divided by 3 is equal to k, which is 3. I want to multiply both sides by 3 to get rid of this denominator. So I'll do times 3 over 1 here. I can just do times 3 here. These cancel out. So we have x minus 1 is equal to 9. And then I'll add 1 to both sides, plus 1 plus 1. These are gone. And x is equal to 9 plus 1, which is 10. So it looks like our answer is going to be D. Number 2, for I equals the square root of negative 1, what's the sum of 7 plus 3i plus negative 8 plus 9i? For this problem, you don't even need to know that I equals the square root of negative 1. All we have to do is combine like terms. When this will be needed to know, I'll show how you can use that to solve a problem. But for this, I'm just going to combine my like terms. So 7 minus 8 is going to be negative 1. 3i plus 9i is going to be plus 12i. So it looks like A will be the right choice here. Number 3, on Saturday afternoon, Armin sent M text messages each hour for 5 hours, and Tyrone sent P text messages each hour for 4 hours. Which of the following represents the total number of messages sent by Armin and Tyrone on Saturday afternoon? So it looks like all the answer choices are in terms of M and P. Let's make sense of this. Armin is sending text messages for 5 hours, and each hour it says he sends M text messages. So that would be 5 times M for him, for the text messages that he sent. And we're going to add how many Tyrone sent. So Tyrone sends text messages for 4 hours, and each hour he sends P text messages. So that would be plus 4 times P. That's going to be the total number sent that day. So let's see what matches. It looks like C is our answer here. 5M plus 4P. Okay, number 4. Kathy is a repair technician for a phone company. Each week she receives a batch of phones that need repairs. The number of phones that she has left to fix at the end of each day can be estimated with the equation P equals 108 minus 23D, where P is the number of phones left and D is the number of days she has worked that week. What's the meaning of the value 108 in this equation? So one thing that I recognize right away is that this is a linear equation. And my suggestion would be to write these in terms of y equals mx plus b, where you know m is the slope, or it will be the rate of change for the situation. It's going to be the slope on the graph, but it's the rate of change. And then the b is going to be your y-intercept, but it's also the initial value when your input variable x would be 0. So what would this equation be in this form? Well, we have p is equal to, the rate of change is going to be negative 23d, which means every day there's 23 less phones she has to fix, and then plus 108. So 108 is going to be the value when D is 0. So when 0 days have passed, she will have 108 phones left to fix. Okay, so what's the meaning of 108 in this equation? Let's see what matches what we just talked about. So Kathy will complete the repairs within 108 days. No, that's not what we said. We said that it's going to be how many phones she has left to fix when D is 0, because this will just be 0 here. B, Kathy starts each week with 108 phones to fix. Yeah, that makes sense, because when D is 0, we have 108 phones. Okay, so that's the right answer. Let's take a look at the other ones just to see why these don't work. Kathy repairs phones at a rate of 108 per hour. No, it's not 108 per hour, and it's not even per hour, because this is days anyways. D, Kathy repairs phones at a rate of 108 per day. Again, the rate was negative 23 per day. So that means there's 23 less phones each day that she has to fix. A lot of problems like this will ask you about the rate of change or the initial value. Okay, so let's go on to number 5. Which of the following is equivalent to the expression above? So it looks like we have to simplify this and see what it matches with. The first thing I'm going to notice here is that there's a negative sign. I'm going to just distribute that to each of the terms inside here. So I'll end up with, let's see, this will become a positive x squared y. Then I'll get a negative 3xy squared. And then I'll get a positive 3y squared. So I'm adding this to what I have over here. Let's see how many x squared y's I have. Well, here's one, here's another. So I'll end up with 2x squared y's. Let's look at our xy squareds. I have negative 3xy squareds here. I have positive 5xy squareds here. I'm going to be really careful about the variables here to make sure I'm matching the like terms. So 5 of them minus 3 of them, that's going to end up with 2xy squareds. And then what's left over, the 3y squared, and I have negative 3y squareds. Those cancel out, so that's nice. So this is all I have. What matches this? Looks like 2x squared y plus 2xy squared. Yep, that matches here. So here's our answer. Number 6. H equals 3a plus 28.6. A pediatrician uses the model above to estimate the height h of a boy in inches in terms of the boy's age a in years between the ages of 2 and 5. Based on the model, what's the estimated increase in inches of a boy's height each year? So let's just get these units straight. H is going to be the height in inches, and then A, it told us, is the age in years. It said between the ages of 2 and 5. It's asking for the estimated increase in inches of a boy's height each year. So each year, how many more inches would a boy with this model be? Well, if I add 1 to A here, every time I add 1 more, I'd have 3 more altogether. Okay, so this is really your rate of change. Again, if you think of it as y equals mx plus b, then we have h equals your rate of change, which is 3 times a, plus your initial value, which is 28.6. That would be when a is 0, even though really it's supposed to be between when they're 2 and 5. But that's kind of the meaning of this 3 and the 28.6 here. Here's your rate of change. So the estimated increase in inches of a boy's height each year should be 3. That's just our rate of change. Number 7. So we've got this giant equation right here, and it says the formula above gives the monthly payment M needed to pay off a loan of P dollars at R% annual interest over N months. Which of the following gives P in terms of M, R, and N? And all that means is solve for P. So here's P right here. We've got to get that by itself. And I'm just looking at the structure of this equation here, especially on the right side. It looks like there's some expression divided by another expression being multiplied by P. I'm going to simplify that, and let's just say, for example, if we had something like this, M equals something over something else times P. Okay, so here's that A part, and here's the B part in the denominator. Well, what would you do to get P by itself? You would just multiply by the reciprocal. So I'd multiply by B over A on both sides. And so these cancel out. P would be equal to, it looks like the denominator is now in the numerator on this other side. The numerator is in the denominator. So if you multiply by the reciprocal of all of this, that will get P by itself. So what has this on the top? Well, let's look at our answer choices. This one with a negative 1 at the end. Not this. This one has a negative 1 at the end. Okay? And this original numerator is in the denominator. So you can check carefully. You might want to make sure that it all looks right. But this is going to be the answer here. It's just that both sides are multiplied by the reciprocal of this fraction. Number 8. If A over B equals 2, what is the value of 4B divided by A? There's a couple ways to do this. The first one might be to use substitution. So if we have A over B equals 2, I could say that A would equal 2B. I just multiply both sides by B. A equals 2B. And if I have 4B over A, and if I substitute this in, I would have, let's see, 4B over A equals 2B. So if A is 2B, I get 4B over 2B, which the B's cancel out. 4 over 2 just equals 2. So it looks like our answer is going to be 2 right here. So that would be one way to do this. Another way maybe to make sense of this is to say, well, let's just take the reciprocal on both sides here. So A over B equals 2 over 1. I could flip that and say that B over A is equal to, I'm going to flip this side as well, 1 over 2. And if we need 4B over A, I'd have to multiply both sides by 4. So now I have 4B over A. I have to multiply this side by 4. 4B over A would equal 4 over 2. These cancel out to become 2 on the right. So that's another way to get that answer. Number 9, what is the solution xy to the system of equations above? So we have a system of equations. One thing I see, there's x's here and x's here, so they're kind of in a different order. What I'm going to do for this system of equations is see if I can get one of the variables to cancel out. I'm going to multiply this bottom one by, let's see, negative 2. And what that will give me is negative 4y here, and I have 4y up here. So I can use the combination method. I add the left sides of both equations and the right sides of both equations to make a new equation. And in doing that, my y's will cancel out. So let's see how that will happen. So I've got 3x plus 4y is equal to negative 23. This equation, I'm multiplying both sides by negative 2. So I would end up with, and I'm going to rewrite with the y's here. So negative 4y, and I'd have plus 2x. So 2x minus 4y is on the left. And I have to multiply this by negative 2, so that would equal positive 38. Let's add the left and right sides of these equations. So I end up with 5x. These just cancel out. And when I add them up, and then when I add these up, I would get positive 15. Divide by 5, x is equal to 3. So now that we know x, we can plug that in to one of these equations to solve for y. And the shortcut would even be to see which one has x as 3. Well, this is the only choice. That should be the one that works. Let's just double check to make sure that's going to be the right equation. 3 times 3, that's going to be 9 plus 4y equals negative 23. I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides, and I would get, this would turn into 4y is equal to negative, it'd be 32. Divide by 4, y equals negative 8. Yep, that matches. Great. Number 10. For the function g defined above, a is a constant and g of 4 equals 8. What's the value of g of negative 4? So here's our function that we have. We're given that if we plug in 4 for x, that the answer is going to be 8. So that means that if I plug in 4 here, I'm going to get 8. Let's write this out. A times 4 is going in place of x squared plus 24. They tell us that that gives us 8. So this is going to be 16a plus 24 equals 8. Let's subtract 24 on both sides. We're going to get 16a is equal to, if we subtract 24 here, we get negative 16. Divide by 16, and a is equal to negative 1. Next, we need to figure out what g of negative 4 is. That means that if we plug in negative 4 for x, what would this become? Well, now that we know what a is, we can plug that in. At first, we couldn't figure it out because we didn't know what a was. That's why I solved for a here. So g of negative 4, that would mean that I have a is negative 1. Negative 1 times, I'm going to put this in parentheses, negative 4 squared plus 24. That's what I have to find. And this is going to be negative 4 times itself is positive 16 times negative 1 is negative 16 plus 24. Looks like that would be equal to 8. So the answer should be A. Number 11. B equals 2.35 plus 0.25x. C equals 1.75 plus 0.40x. In the equations above, B and C represent the price per pound in dollars of beef and chicken respectively, X weeks after July 1 during last summer. what was the price per pound of beef when it was equal to the price per pound of chicken? So how much is this when it's equal to this? I need to find that value. So if these are equal to each other, I know that this expression is going to equal this expression. And my plan is to solve for x. What would x have to be so that these prices are equal? And then I'll plug that value in for x to see how much this is. So I'm going to set these equal to each other first. 2.35 plus 0.25x is equal to 1.75 plus 0.40x. I want to get x by itself. That's a 4 right here. I want to get x by itself, so let's subtract 0.25x from both sides. This is going to be gone. I would end up with plus 0.15x. 0.40 minus 0.25 is 0.15. X is here. On the left side, I'm going to, on both sides, I'd have to subtract 1.75. So this will cancel out. If I subtract 1.75, minus 1.75, I'm going to end up with, this is going to be 0. I'm going to borrow from here. 13 minus 7 is 6. 1 minus 1 point. Okay, so we have 0.60 equals 0.15x. 0.15x. So let's divide both sides by 0.15. 60 divided by 15, I could think about it that way. That would be 4. 0.6 divided by 0.15 would be 4. So 4 is equal to x. So I'm not done yet. The question was asking, what is the price of beef when these are equal to each other? And I found out that x has to be 4 for that to be true, for these to be equal to each other. So 2.35 plus 0.25 times 4, well, that's going to be plus 1 here. 2.35 plus 1 is going to be 3.35. So D would be the answer. Number 12. A line in the xy plane passes through the origin and has a slope of 1/7. Which of the following points lies on the line? Now, when I look at the answer choices here, this one is just so tempting to choose, but let's carefully think about this. One thing that I want to note is that if it goes through the origin, 0, 0 is a point that's going to be on the graph. So that's a nice clue because you get 1 point there. And oftentimes if you have more than 1 point, you can figure out the slope or you can figure out something about the line. So I'm just going to draw this out. So I know that 0, 0 is a point on here. And the slope is 1/7. If this is actually true, well, let's see, 1, 7, that would be, 1 going up here, and I go up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'd be up here, and that would be my line, and that definitely doesn't have a slope of 1/7. So here's a couple ways to think about this. One, I could say, well, y equals 1/7 times x, and which values here would work for this equation? If I plug in 0 for x, and 7 for y, 7 equals 1/7 times 0. No, that doesn't work. This one we already figured out doesn't work. Let's check in the equation too. 1 for x, that's 1/7. Does that equal 7? No, definitely not. For c, well, 7, 7, I know that's a slope of 1. That's just going to be, a point up here. So that one's not going to work. I'm not even going to check that. Let's check D. We have 2 for y. 2 is equal to 1/7 times x is 14. So 14 here. Yep, the 14 and 7 would simplify to 2. 2 equals 2, that's true. So that would work. And just to see where that would be on the graph, I'd go, over 14. Let's just pretend that's 14. I go up 2. So here's the line. It's going to have a slope of 1/7. So D's the answer. Again, that origin point that's given, use 0, 0, because that can help you in a lot of problems with lines. 13. If x is greater than 3, which of the following is equivalent to this whole expression? Well, one way to figure this out is to say, let's make x a certain number and see what this fraction would be. So let's just say they say x is greater than 3. Let's say x equals 4. If x is 4, what would this simplify to? And then we can see which answer choice here would give us that same number. So if I plug in 4 here, I'd get 1 over 4 plus 2 is 6, plus, this is going to be 1 over 4 plus 3 is 1, it'd be over 7. I'm going to make a common denominator down here. That's going to be, let's see, times 7 over 7 times 6 over 6. So we get 7 over 42. So we have 1 over 7 over 42 plus, this is going to be 6 over 42. 6 over 42, which is going to be 1 over, we have 13 over 42. Well, it's 1 over something is always just the reciprocal of the denominator. I could even just show that here by saying, let's multiply the top and bottom by 42 over 13, divided by 42 over 13. These cancel out. I get 1 times 42 over 13. So if I plug in 4 for x, I should get 42 over 13. And I can check which one here would give me 42 over 13. Right away, I can tell that C is not going to give me 42 over 13. They give me, it's 8 plus 5 if I plug in 4 for x. So that's definitely not it. This is why I can tell that that's definitely not going to be 42 over 13. So between these, which would give me 42 over 13? Well, let's see, 2 times 4 plus 5, that's going to be 13 here. And then in the bottom, I have 4 squared, so 16 plus 20, that's 36, plus 6 is going to be 42. So this gives me 13 over 42. That's actually the reciprocal of what I want. So if these were flipped, that would be the answer. It looks like B has them flipped, right? So the top would be, this is, if I plug in 4 for x, 16 plus 20 plus 6, that's 42, divided by 2 times 4 plus 5 is 13. So B is going to be the answer here. That would be one way to solve this. Another way would be to rewrite this expression the same way I did here by getting a common denominator, but just in terms of x's. And you'll get your answer in terms of x's. So I'll show that. I'd try to be kind of quick here with that process. So I'm going to get 1 over x plus, so 1 divided by 1 over x plus 2 plus 1 over x plus 3. To get that common denominator, I'm going to have to multiply both sides by x plus 3 over x plus 3 for this side, because I want the common denominator of x plus 3 times x plus 2. Okay, I'll do that down here. So x plus 2, and we're going to I'm multiplying by x plus 2 over x plus 2 here. So I'm really multiplying by 1 for these parts. I would get, I'm going to go over on this side, I get 1 over, looks like I'd have 1 of x plus 3, so x plus 3 over, in the denominator I get, if I FOIL this, I get x squared plus 2x plus 3x, so that's plus 5x, and then 3 times 2 is plus 6. Okay, so that was just this part. I'm going to have a common denominator, so I'm just going to add onto this part here what I get when I multiply these. That's just plus x plus 2. So if I simplify this by combining like terms, I would get 1 over 2x plus 5 divided by x squared plus 5x plus 6. And again, 1 over a fraction will end up being the reciprocal of the bottom, and that also matches B. So that's how you can solve this problem in terms of x's. Let's go down to 14. If 3x minus y equals 12, what is the value of 8 to the x over 2 to the y? In order to understand how to solve this problem, it would be good to know a few rules of exponents. So one would be something like this. If we have a squared raised to the third power, what would this simplify to? Well, a squared just means a times a, and raising that to the third power means I multiply it by itself 3 times. So I'm going to have another times a, and one more right here. Altogether, how many a's do we have being multiplied by each other? Well, there's 3 sets of 2a's, so that's 6. So that's going to be a to the 2 times 3, which is a to the 6th power. So we'll use that in solving this problem. And then another rule that would be good to understand is if we have a division, let's say we have b to the 5th over b to the 3rd, how can we simplify this? B to the 5th, I could write out as b times b times b times b times b over, I'm going to have 3 b's being multiplied by each other in the bottom. And both 3 on the top will cancel out here. So b cubed over b cubed, these cancel out. And I'm left with b times b. How do these exponents combine? Well, this is really b to the 5 minus 3 because I've gotten rid of how many were in the denominator in the numerator as well. So that's going to be b squared. Right there's my b squared. So we'll use these two rules in solving this problem. One other thing that will be helpful to start out here is to write everything as the same base. You can see here I have b as the base and b as the base in the top and bottom. So I want to do that here. And I could say that 8 equals 2 cubed. So I'm going to say we have 2 cubed raised to the x power divided by 2 to the y. So this would equal, using this rule here, I'm multiplying the 2 by 3 here. I'm going to multiply 3 by x. So this is going to be 2 to the 3x over, in the bottom I just still have 2 to the y. Now I'm going to apply this rule where I subtract the bottom exponent from the top exponent when I have the same base. So I would get 2 to the 3x minus y. I'm doing 3x minus y. And they tell us that 3x minus y equals 12, so I can just substitute in 12 here, and I get 2 to the 12. So A is the right answer for 14. Let's go back here up to number 15. Okay, so 15 says if ax plus 2 times bx plus 7 equals 15x squared plus cx plus 14 for all values of x and a plus b equals 8, what are two possible values for c? So let's see. I've got two factors here being multiplied, and I have standard form here. They've combined like terms x squareds, x's, and a constant on the right. I have to figure out what c is, and c is the coefficient of x. So how many x's do I have? What I'm going to do is turn this into standard form as well and see how many x's I have. So I can do that by foiling. So I'd have abx squared, and then I'm going to have, right here, to have plus 7ax, the ax times 7. I'm going to have 2 times bx, so plus 2bx. I'm going to have 2 times 7 is plus 14. So that is equal to this, but I haven't combined my like terms here because I have x's. How many x's do I have? Well, let's rewrite all this first. We have abx squared plus how many x's? If I factor out an x from here, I have 7a plus 2b. Let me make a little more room here. So I have 7a plus 2b x's. Okay, I have 7a times x and plus 2b times x. Altogether, I have 7a plus 2b x's. And I have the 14 here. So this is how many x's I have, which is the same as how many x's I have here, which is c. So I know that 7a plus 2b is equal to c. That's how many x's I have. All I need to do to figure out what c could be equal to is figure out what a and b are now. So that's my next goal. And I'm going to kind of use the same thinking here, which is saying, well, what coefficient matches with a and b? And I have a times b is equal to 15, right? That's how many x squareds I have. So I know that ab equals 15. And I was also given here that a plus b equals 8. A plus b is equal to 8. So that's not too hard to figure out what a and b could be equal to. What multiplies to 15 and adds up to 8? Well, I could have 3 or 5 for these. So, and it could be switched. It could be 3 times 5 equals 15, or 5 times 3 equals 15. So a could be 3 or 5, and b would be the opposite one. So let's just plug in a equals 3 to start. A equals 3, b equals 5 to see what we get for c. 7 times 3 is 21, plus 2 times 5 is 10. 21 plus 10 is equal to 31. So c could be 31. The other value that it could be, if I flip these now, so a is going to be 5, b is going to be 3. Let me just write this here. A equals 5, b equals 3. Let's plug this in. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 2 times 3 is 6. That would be 41. So it looks like c could be equal to 31 or 41, and that's going to be choice D. So now we're going down to the grid-in section here. If t is greater than 0 and t squared minus 4 equals 0, what's the value of t? So I want to solve for t here. I'm going to just add 4 to both sides. T squared equals 4. And I can just think in my head, well, what times itself is 4? It's either 2 or negative 2 times itself. But we know that t has to be greater than 0. So t equals plus or minus 2. That would make this true. And I have to use the positive version. So 2 is going to be the answer. All right, so here's the answer. It's 2. Another way to solve this is you could take the square root on both sides. And when you do that, on the right side, you have to do plus or minus. So let me rewrite that here. I would get, this simplifies to t is equal to plus or minus the square root of 4, which is plus or minus 2. And again, our answer has to be positive. So the answer is 2. 17. A summer camp counselor wants to find a length x in feet across the lake as represented in the sketch above. So let's see, here's our x. The lengths represented by AB, EB, BD, and CD on the sketch were determined to be 1,800 feet. I'm going to start marking these in. So AB was 1,800 right here. EB is 1,400. And then BD is 700. So BD here's 700. And 800 feet respectively for, let's see, our last one, CD. Here's 800. Segments AC and DE intersect at B, and angle AEB and angle CDB have the same measure. What's the value of x? So they've already marked down that these angles AEB and CDB are congruent here. I also know that vertical angles are congruent, so I'd say these are congruent. So I have 2 angles that are congruent with 2 other angles on this triangle. I know that this third one also has to be congruent to this third one then, because they have to add up to 180. Oops, 1, 2, 3, there we go. Okay, so I have similar triangles. Similar triangles mean that they're going to have proportional relationships between the sides. They'll have the same ratio. So what's the ratio? How many times do I multiply the side of this right here to get this length? And I know those are corresponding because I'm going from the 1 angle mark over to the 2. The 1 angle mark over to the 2. So I double that to get this value. That means I'd have to double 800 to get this, and that would be 1,600. Okay, so the answer would be 1,600. Number 18, x plus y equals negative 9, x plus 2y equals negative 25. According to the system of equations above, what's the value of x? So I'm going to solve this system using a different method than I did last time. I'm going to use substitution here. So I'm going to solve for y first in terms of x by subtracting x on both sides. So I would get y is equal to negative 9 minus x. When I subtract x on both sides, that's what y would be. And then I'll just plug this in for the y right here. So I get x plus 2 times negative 9 minus x is equal to negative 25. So I have only x's here, now I can solve for x. I'm going to distribute the 2, and I would get x minus 18 minus 2x is equal to negative 25. So then I'll combine like terms, I'll combine x's. I have negative x, and then I'll add 18 on both sides is equal to, I would get negative 25 plus 18 is negative 7. Let's multiply both sides by negative 1 to get x equals 7. So 7 would be the answer here. Number 19. In a right triangle, one angle measures x degrees where the sine of x equals 4 over 5. What is the cosine of 90 minus x? So I'm going to draw out this right triangle. Let's say that this is x. Here's my right angle. The sine of x is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So the opposite side is here, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 5. That would give me sine of x equals 4 over 5. And they're asking for the cosine of 90 minus x. So let's make sense of what 90 minus x is. If this angle is x, then the other acute angle would have to add up with x to 90 degrees. These would add up to 90. So let's just call this y for now. Okay, so this angle is y. So I know that x plus y is equal to 90 degrees. And if I subtract x on both sides, I would get y is equal to 90 minus x. So this 90 minus x really means the other acute angle. So this is asking for the cosine of this other acute angle. Well, that's going to be adjacent over hypotenuse, which is also 4 over 5. So 4 over 5 would be the answer. I guess I could write it also at 0.8 on the grid-in part. Either of these should work, or even 0.8 I think you could probably do. It'd be good just to note that this idea that the sine of one angle is the cosine of the other angle. Or I could even say that the cosine of one angle is the sine of the opposite angle, the other acute angle. All right, so number 20 is our last one here. If a equals 5 square root of 2 and 2a equals square root of 2 times x, what's the value of x? So 2a is just going to be double this because a is equal to that. So 2a is going to be 10 times the square root of 2 instead of 5 times the square root of 2. And that's equal to the square root of 2 times x right here. 2a, that's our 2a, equals square root of 2 times x. I'm going to split this into the square root of 2 times the square root of x, and that is equal to 10 times the square root of 2. So let's just divide both sides by the square root of 2, and these would cancel out. And then I just have to square both sides so that I get x here, and all I have left over on the left side was 10. So 10 squared is 100 is equal to x. So the answer is 100. So that's it for the no calculator section of this test. I hope that was helpful. And again, if you'd like to download this PDF, you can go to the link in the description. And there's also going to be a link for SAT math notes and the formulas that would be good to have memorized that aren't given on the test.